We're in Teaneck, New Jersey, outside of a temple here where there is an event for an Israeli group called Zaka. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you decided to come out and protest today?
So we're here for one reason and one reason only: to stop this war, to let people know what's going on, to let them understand that what's happening is more than just a war. This is not a war. These are the Zionists. The Zionists are taking over and trying to take our land. We've been there since 1948. We've been there before them, but they decided to, after we helped them, we brought them in, and we want to make them part of us. We want a two-state solution, but the Zionists took over, and they want to now steal our land and kick us out, and that's unacceptable.
Speaking of a two-state solution, at this point, do you have any faith in a two-state solution?
We tried so much. We tried so many times. Many times we said, please, let's do it. Let's try to make it happen. We even gave up different ideas. We sacrificed from our people just to accept the two-state solution, but they would never even accept it at all, unfortunately. But we understand, with the faith and belief in God, we will end up being free eventually.
What's your response to many of these guys, the pro-Israel side, who's cheering to free the hostages?
They're being blind. They're being brainwashed. They don't know what's going on. They're just going with the flow, but they're not realizing the history of Palestine. They're not understanding where it started from. They all just know one thing: October 7th. But they don't understand, when you hit somebody too many times, they have no other choice but to fight back.
Speaking, you mentioned October 7th. Many in America and these protesters call that a terrorist attack. Do you support or condemn Hamas's actions on October 7th?
If October 7th didn't happen, if October 7th did not happen, then we would not be recognized right now. October 7th had to happen in order to wake up. But October 7th is nothing compared to 1948 and all the years after that. They took many times, they attacked us, they did exactly what they did again many times, and now they're doing the worst of the worst. And we're just sitting here to watch it? Absolutely not. We have to stand, we have to fight, we have to resist.
What do you think of Joe Biden's handling of the conflict up until now? He's just decided to send over more arms.
Joe Biden is literally the most hypocrite person I ever heard about in my life. He says he wants a ceasefire, yet he's sending the bombs and the weapons to Israel to kill innocent people. So how does that make sense? Make it make sense, I always say.
In the upcoming election, it's probably going to be between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
At this point, I don't even know if there's going to be an election, because both of them right now at this point are against what is the right, what is the truth, what is supposed to be happening. Joe Biden over here is saying, I want to support, but at the same time he's supporting underneath the table. Donald Trump is saying this war would never happen if he was in position. But what's going on has been happening since a long time ago. So it needs to stop now.
Sir, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to mention?
Thank you so much for being here and all your support.
I came out because we're not going to be intimidated in our towns, and we're not going to be intimidated in our communities by people who hate us. They don't have the freedom to come in here and do that, and we're going to stand up and we're going to assert ourselves, and we're going to let them know that.
Absolutely. Many of these people are calling for a ceasefire. What are your thoughts when you hear them calling for a ceasefire?
The whole world wants a ceasefire, but bring back the hostages first. This war could end immediately. Israel would stop immediately. They'd give in to the world pressure immediately if they would return the hostages.
Absolutely. There was one of their chants that said, there is only one solution, Intifada revolution. They're chanting it right now, actually. What do you think of when they chant things like that?
What do you think about that? How about complete annihilation of the Jewish people? The world tried to do that and they failed, and we're rebuilding, and it's never going to happen again. Never again.
What's your reaction to them trying to intimidate you with chants like this outside of...
Do I look like I'm about to back down? Do I look like I'm going to succumb to their intimidation? Absolutely not. I'm not going to stoop to their level, but I ain't backing down. You're not coming to my neighborhood, and you're not pissing in my parade. You're not coming to my neighborhood, and you're not intimidating me. They're not even Americans. These are paid protesters. They're getting paid. I'll give them $1 more to go home.
Many anti-Israel groups call what's going on now in Gaza a genocide. In South Africa, they were trying to bring charges in the ICJ. What do you think when you see things like that?
It's a very interesting word. You're using the word genocide. If you were to actually look at the numbers in Israel and the amount of Palestinian people who are there, the number has increased tenfold over the last few years. right? So a genocide is a systematic destruction of the people. That's not what's happening. Israel is rooting out terrorism. They're rooting out Hamas. Israel wants freedom for the Palestinian people, but not under the guidance of Hamas. They're not allowing Hamas to be their leaders. You cannot commit an act like October 7th and expect that there will not be repercussions.
What do you think of President Joe Biden's handling of the conflict now?
It's very interesting. He has a very interesting political role that he has to play. He has to make decisions. He has to think about longevity in his career. He's been in support of Israel up until now, and I support him for that. And I appreciate him being there for Israel and having Israel's back.
Do you think he's supportive enough of Israel?
I think he's been doing a great job of supporting Israel. Whenever he says, like, can you fully trust a politician? I don't really know. I'm not there to comment that. But he also has to look at his career, his longevity, being reelected. So sometimes politicians have to say things. But up until now, they've hit Israel's back, and they know Israel is their ally.
Sir, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Some people are calling for a ceasefire. Have you heard of that? And what do you make of calls for a ceasefire?
The war started on October 7th. There are still 130 hostages, and Hamas is still in power. The worst decision at this point would to stop when Hamas seems to be on the verge of dissolution. It's worse for Israel. It's also worse for the Palestinians. It's been 20 years of Hamas terror on both sides of the border. Let's end this now, and everybody can move forward and build an actual state in Israel and wherever else.
Is that an endorsement? Do you still have faith in a two-state solution?
At this point, it's going to be a very difficult question to answer, and I don't think either side is quite ready for that.
I actually visited Israel 2 weeks after the war started on a missionary trip to help out, and the amount of hurt from everybody was very much so seen.
Are you guys satisfied with President Joe Biden's handling of the conflict?
At this point, no. It seems like he's trying to stabilize the Middle East by enabling the worst actors in the Middle East. A few years ago, the Middle East was breaking out in a crisis of peace. Israel, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, they were all the Abraham Accords. Trade was going on, intelligence was being shared. That's no longer true.
What do you think about Joe Biden's handling of the conflict breaking out?
Israel is one of America's closest allies. We shouldn't be turning our back on her. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. The way forward for a stable, safe, and democratic Middle East is to support Israel and help them wipe out the terrorists who are the real obstacles to peace.
Do you feel as though Joe Biden is turning his back on Israel?
Recently, yeah. I think he's making a mistake.
I mean, you look around, we have Israeli flags as well as American ones here.
Absolutely.
We don't see any American flags on the other side.
They don't.
Well, guys, family, thank you so much for your time. Please stay safe out here. Some people have been justifying the actions of Hamas on October 7th. Will you support or condemn the actions of Hamas on October 7th?
I reject that premise. I want to talk about what it means to oppress a people and make them so desperate that they have to have a means of resistance. We got to talk about occupation. We have to talk about a siege on Gaza. If we want to have that conversation that you're posing to me, we're having it at step 7 when it should be had at step 1.
You're talking about resistance. Do you think there's a limit to what could be qualified as legitimate resistance, which is what some people would argue the terrorist attacks of October 7th were, beyond the realm of legitimate resistance? What do you think of that?
I think that we need to talk about the terrorist acts that are perpetrated by the state of Israel.
Absolutely. Many people here are demanding the release of hostages. What do you think when you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks to be a hostage, no?
Do you think the hostages should be released?
I think that, yeah, I think the hostages should be released, 100%. But I also think that Israel should stop killing its own hostages.
Okay, absolutely. I mean, do you think Israel is killing its hostages on purpose or in efforts to, save and rescue or kill the terrorists that are holding them?
I don't have exact details. I know that the bombing is widely indiscriminate. So to say that they're doing it by accident is nonsense. If you're carpet bombing an entire area, you're bound to kill people who you might identify with because you're carpet bombing the whole thing. I think that the approach is not conducive to saving hostages. I think the approach is like whether you like it or not, you're going to end up killing your own hostages because the approach is so wild and so indiscriminate.
I don't know if you supported a two-state solution before this, but do you think that a two-state solution is plausible after this? Would you support something like that?
Well, as Palestinians, we believe in the right of return, and what that looks like for me is access for people to have, of all identities, to have access to all of the Holy Land.
Absolutely. What do you think of President Joe Biden's handling of this conflict?
No comment.
Could you see yourself supporting Donald Trump or Joe Biden in an upcoming election? The matchup looks like it'll be between them two.
No and no.
What do you think about Michigans? They had a no contest vote. You know, they voted no opinion. What do you think of people deciding to try to withhold their vote for Biden?
I mean, it's just a means of showing electoral power, which I mean is beneficial and it's valid and there are good things to it. But you know, it was a message that was sent, and I think it was a successful message.
What do you make of some people who argue that Joe Biden is the quote-unquote lesser of two evils between a matchup between him and Donald Trump?
Yeah, I know. I mean, so I'm not a one-voter issue. I would criticize Joe Biden on multiple fronts. We could talk about healthcare. We could talk about student loans. We could talk about policing in the United States. I don't believe or I don't agree with the lesser of two evil conversation. I think that we need somebody who's going to fight for our issues, who's going to care about humans and people, and I don't think either option is that option.
Do you think enough countries are doing enough around the world for what you're calling a genocide in Gaza?
No.
What do you think of that then? What do you think about countries in the Middle East? You know, I mean, the Houthis in Yemen have been shooting off some rockets. Iran's been supporting some proxies. Do you support those groups?
So you said if people are doing enough? No, no, nobody's doing enough. It's so never again means never again for anybody. The numbers are staggering. The realities are staggering. I don't know what to say.
Never again is never. Is that like an allusion towards the Holocaust?
It stems from the legacy of the Holocaust. It stems from the lessons that we were supposed to learn from the German Holocaust of the Jewish people and others.
Do you think the conflict in Gaza right now is comparable to the Holocaust?
I don't compare atrocities. I think that's silly. Every issue can be analyzed on its own merits. It doesn't have to be compared. I'm not interested in comparing what's going on in Gaza to the Holocaust. The Holocaust was its own issue. It happened. And now we're talking about Gaza, and Gaza's happening. Does that make sense?
Mobilize the Intifada! Mobilize!